Hour at 10 o'clock having come and gone, I call this order of the Liquor Control Committee to order. Father, I hope we don't need your services later, but we appreciate you being here. Before we get going, because everybody's got stuff going on, I want to throw a lot of thank yous out there. The committee recently hosted a tour in Pittsburgh. We got a chance to go talk to microbrewers, micro distillers. Many thanks to everybody involved with that. I see Brittany Rodas, Lynn Davies, two to my left, Erica Godseed. Thanks to the restaurants for hosting dinner. It was a great tour, a lot of education, many things learned. Chairman Deasy, turn it over to you.
Good morning, Chairman. Great to be here, and obviously we have a packed agenda today. So by the crowd, I see there's a lot of interest in this particular bill. So ready to get going.
Ms. Godseed, would you please call the roll?
Kyle.
Here.
Dowling. Here. Gatos. Here. Joswiak. Here. Kale. Here. Lewis. Here. Mahalik. Here. O'Neill.
Here.
Rothman.
Here.
Ryan.
Here.
Simmons, Leave. Stats.
Here.
Tobash.
Yes, here.
Topper.
Here.
Whelan. Deasy.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
Deloso.
Here.
Donatucci. Here. Isaacson. Here. Kenyatta.
Here.
Coolin. Here. Malagari.
Here.
Ravenstall.
Here.
Schweier.
Here.
Hail, hail, gang's all here. Of course, our hopes for Representative Simmons, who couldn't join us today. He is ill right now. First up on the agenda, we have House Bill 1346. Do I have a motion to move this bill? Moved by O'Neill, second by Ryan. Have a seat, Rep. Lewis. Any discussions on the bill? Seeing Chairman Deasy.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I do have a question for the maker of the bill or whoever wishes to discuss. Part of Act 49, or Act 39, I apologize, was to set up a wine and spirits wholesale and retail privatization committee to study further changes made to the alcohol system in PA. And being a new chairman, I don't know what the results of that commission, whether they had met, what the status is. So I would like to know if somebody could fill me in on what their findings were and if those findings were taken into account with this particular bill.
Chairman, that commission was never formed. My understanding was it wasn't mandatory under Act 39. The committee did have 2 hearings since the passage of Act 39, but as for the commission, it never was formed.
Okay. Part of, I mean, if what I read correctly, they were required to meet within 45 days. So that's like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Is there a reason why they never met or was never formed?
Obviously, because the chairman that preceded us were not as forward-thinking as you or I, Chairman Deasy.
So, do we have? Was there delegates named to that committee? Do we have those names?
I do not have those names. That was 2 chairmans ago, I believe.
Okay. I think, according to my notes, there should have been 2 members from the. Yeah, I know Representative Kinsey from my homework, or actually Lynn's homework. Representative Kinsey was our appointee, as well as the prior chairman Costa, but I don't know the status from the Republican side who those members were.
Honestly, Chairman, I'm unaware that we ever did appoint. But again, being back from 2.5 years, we're going to have to go back and do the research on that. That's well before my time here.
Yeah. Oh,
We'll have
and
to
I
dig
understand,
into
and that's why I said, being the new guy here, I'm just trying to get up to speed on a lot of issues, and I appreciate my
Same
staff
here, brother.
trying to figure out where we have gone with this particular issue and where we are going. So that was my particular question at this time, but I think
Chairman Mr. Ravenstahl?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on Chairman Deasy's comments, not only has a study not been done, but when is the last time this committee has had a full-fledged hearing on privatization or any, large-scale change such as this legislation?
Again, I'm unaware of that, and when Act 39 was moving through the legislature last year, I was largely laying in a chemo ward and couldn't really tell you.
I am very sorry to hear that, and that certainly was not my intention with the question. But my point is, in looking in this room, there are several freshmen here, and I think going back to 2011, there's over 50% of the members who are new to the House of Representatives. So I think we should kind of slow down on this issue and really, have a further vetting as we move forward, because there's a lot of new members, and I know this issue's been around for several decades, which I'm sure we'll hear going forward. But there's a lot of new members here who really haven't dove into this fully, in my opinion. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ravenstahl. Any further comments?
Chairman.
Chairman, Mr. Schwartz?
Thank you, sir. I'll take the promotion. Appreciate that.
You sure about that?
Well, not being in the majority, it makes it a little easier to say yes to it. So anyway, Chairman, I want to not to belabor the point, but I want to start by very respectfully saying I very much appreciate having been on this committee since I was first elected and first took office in 2015. I do genuinely appreciate how you've been running this committee, and I think that's a sentiment echoed by everyone that I've spoken to, at least on our side of the aisle. But our legislative history with Act 39 is that we said before we would make any more changes, and I voted for Act 39, before we would make any more changes to the LCB, that we would go through this study. And then last year at a hearing, or 2 years ago, 2017, I believe, at a hearing, a previous Republican chairman said that it was his goal to complete that study before we took any action. Now, he's referring to the House floor, but even still, our legislative history is that we weren't going to be making any more broad wholesale changes to the LCB without going through the process of a real meaningful study. And so echoing what Representative Ravenstahl said, I just think we're getting ahead of ourselves here. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, if I may make a motion, I'd like to move that we move the table to table this bill until the completion of the study that was recommended and or required by Act 39, sir.
You have a second on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Deloso. Again, I wish I were more knowledgeable, Representative, but since I am banned by law from talking to the prior chairman until December,
Understood.
I really can't answer your question for you. I
Understood.
would also encourage members that the amendment process is alive and well in the Pennsylvania House, as evidenced by the 160 amendments we saw filed yesterday. You shouldn't be shy about doing that on the floor.
Point taken. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. We have a motion properly seconded to table this bill. Ms. Godsey, please call the roll.
Kyle.
No.
Dowling. No. Gatos. No. Joswiak. No. Kale. No. Lewis. No. Mahalik. No. O'Neill. No. Rothman. No. Ryan. No. Simmons leaves. Stats. No. Tobash. No. Topper. No. Wheeland. No. Easy.
yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Deloso.
Yes.
Donatucci. Yes. Isaacson.
Yes.
Kenyatta.
Yes.
Kulik. Yes. Malagari.
Yes.
Ravenstahl.
Yes.
Schreier.
Yes.
Motion vote was against, 14 in favor, 10. Motion fails.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sir. Do we have a motion to move House Bill 1346? Oh, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gravely concerned about the impact this will have on over 3,000 wine and spirit workers in Pennsylvanians. And in addition to that grave concern over their general employment, I'm also concerned about the impact this may have on our pension obligation going forward. A bill such as this may result ultimately in over 3,000 Pennsylvanians looking for other employment and create a void in 3,000 contributors to our pension system. I'm a firm no, Mr. Chairman.
Points well taken, sir. Ms. Isaacson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does anybody know what impact this bill will have on the revenue side for the liquor board, specifically liquor enforcement and
I
health?
inquired into that, Representative. I was told until it kicks out of committee, we cannot request a fiscal note, but that we are very interested in that fiscal note when it is produced, and definitely will be shared with all members of the committee.
My understanding is they're opposed.
Representative Ryan.
We've had probably millennium of time to see what free markets do versus that which doesn't. I understand completely the impact, the potential concern about the impact on 3,100 workers, and I do get that. But I can tell you we should be equally much more concerned about the fact that the entire metrics and the methodology that we use within the Commonwealth to evaluate projects, from the Independent Fiscal Office to the Department of Revenue to the executive branch and even to the legislature, is done on a static scoring basis. What that basically means is you can only look at a single variant expression without looking at the second and third order effects of what that might possibly do. So any analysis that we've done, we have a bill that's to allow dynamic scoring within the Commonwealth that would allow us to look at all the different aspects as it relates to the issues about what can happen. So let me give you an example. In Revenue Bulletin 2017-02, the Department of Revenue indicated that you could not allow a new business or any business that acquires an asset to depreciate an asset. That would have single-handedly, without fail, destroyed the entire economic structure of the Commonwealth. The revenue estimate was that would be a loss of about $30 million of revenue to the Commonwealth. If you did it on a dynamic scoring basis, it would have said it would have been about a $100 million gain in revenue to the Commonwealth from the creation of new jobs. Let me put it in perspective. United States Steel would not have been making this announcement of a $1 billion expansion in the Commonwealth. The free market system, and my expertise in the Marine Corps is in economic warfare. And I can tell you, whenever you try to artificially interfere with the market, it will have a negative effect. I've never had a drink in my life. I can tell you this for a definite perspective. The longer we interfere with markets, the greater the negative impact it will have on workers. One final commentary. I've been dealing with the Financial Rescue Caucus for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for 2 years. We should be significantly more concerned that our pension assets are invested in the case of CSRS, 26% in the case of alternative investments, and in the case of PSERS, and 52% of alternative investments. Without getting that under control, the pension obligation to the Commonwealth will pale in comparison with what the real obligations are for 3,100 people by the time the next recession hits. So I would encourage us, let's allow the other 12,400,000 Pennsylvanians to enjoy the benefits of a free market system and recognize that prohibition failed when it came up and it's time to move forward.
Thank you, Representative Ryan. And for all your economic prowess, I have been to bars. Maybe we can collaborate and come together with a better. Any other comments?
Yeah.
Rep. Kenyatta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question, and again, I just want to echo some of the sentiments of my colleagues and of Chairman Deasy. I really have appreciated the way you've run this committee, and obviously we have strong difference of opinion. And what Rep. Deloso brought up about workers, I think that's critically important. And I know I have a lot of those workers that live in my district. But my question today really is about compliance. My understanding in this bill is that vendors would not be required to be licensed in order to operate in Pennsylvania. They wouldn't have to be licensed here in Pennsylvania. And so when we think about enforcement, how do we have effective enforcement if they don't have to be licensed by the Commonwealth? And I don't know what the maker of the bill, what their thoughts were around the enforcement aspect.
The bill does allow for wholesalers that are out of state to operate in the Commonwealth. I think we'd have to check with the board and liquor enforcement to see how they would handle that.
And that, I think that goes to the broader point. There are a lot of questions that remain about this, and I think taking a step back, taking a moment to really review the impacts of this, really looking back at what was agreed to in the past, long before I was here, and I know before you were chair of this committee, to take a holistic view of what the impacts will be. I think it's something that we ought to do. So, thank you.
Point well taken, Representative. Madam Donatucci, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I echo everybody else that this committee's been going really good
So far.
so far. So far.
Give me time.
But today, and I want to echo my colleagues' comments over here, is that I'm a little worried about if you're not licensed, how do you track if taxes are being paid? Where is the
I'm not the
accountability?
Department of Revenue. I can't answer that.
So, I think we need to have something like that. But my other question is this modeled after any other state? Does this exist anywhere else, or are consumers asking for this? Where did this originate from?
It originated from Representative Mosser.
Right, but has any other state done this? Do we know if this has worked
Pennsylvania is
anywhere
one of
else?
only 2 states in the country that don't do it. The other being Utah.
Okay. Well, my concern is that the big box stores are going to benefit the most out of this. So thank you, and I hope that the commission does a study.
Thank you. Any other comments? Representative O'Neill brought up a good point. Would you like recognized?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really 2 things. First off, to any business, whether you're physically here in the state or not, has to be registered with the Department of Revenue to do business within the state. So that's regardless of whether it's a liquor issue or not. The Department of Revenue's responsibility is to collect taxes, and in order to do business with any agency within the state, you have to be registered with the department. The second thing, specifically on the bill, we need to recognize what the current system is. Currently, the current system requires 2 middlemen in this process. So you have the producer who's producing the actual wine, selling to a wholesaler, that the LCB then goes out and buys from the wholesaler, and then it's sold to your local grocery store, which is selling to consumers. This bill allows us to make the process more efficient by removing the artificial requirement for the second middleman. It'll allow the grocery store to go directly to the wholesaler instead of through the LCB and this requirement to buy the wine. It makes sense. It makes the market overall more efficient, and it removes this artificial monopoly that LCB has when it comes to the selling of wine. I certainly feel for the employees throughout the LCB. I don't believe this will cost any of them their jobs, because the state stores are still going to be there. The state stores are still going to be operating just as they do today. Where the grocery store buys the wine is going to have no effect on those employees. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I just have one more question. I think a part of the reason, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, or Lynn, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Department of Revenue is worried about the loss in revenue. Obviously, that's their gig. I worry about the impact it has on the broader enforcement that PLCB is supposed to do. A part of the conversation, robust conversation that happened last session, were about stop and goes and the need for that increased enforcement, particularly in neighborhoods like mine. If there is a loss in revenue going to PLCB, what happens in terms of the enforcement in other areas that don't necessarily pertain to this, and in communities like mine where there's a real concern about neighborhood stores selling shots to kids, and we really needed that additional enforcement. And I think that's one of the reasons the Department of Revenue is concerned about this bill, and I don't know if we have any thought of how we replace that revenue if we go to a model like this?
I've had no discussions with Department of Revenue, so I honestly can't answer your question, but I think they would probably reach out to me first. You know, Rep. Malagary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I echo the sentiments of my colleagues that this committee has been working really, really well the past, since we started, actually. So I really do thank you for that and for your leadership as well. I have a question that kind of piggybacks off of Rep. O'Neill. Why is there no registration or license fee for the out-of-state private wholesalers to sell to Pennsylvania licensees?
Was that for me or Rep. O'Neill?
I'm going to say
who?
this is a collective of anybody who can answer the question.
Take it away, Mike Biaki.
Representative, that was, the way the bill is drafted. If, you think that's a good idea, you could obviously offer an amendment on the floor. But as the bill is currently, you are correct, there is no registration fee regarding the private wholesaler.
I appreciate that.
And Representative, I appreciate all the commendations for how well it's been going. We are still open to amendment if you would, we're open. We're not committing to anything.
Definitely noted. I appreciate that. I do have a follow-up, though. So we have beer distributors, taverns, restaurants who have all invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into their businesses. But we're going to let the large out-of-state private wholesalers essentially do business in the Commonwealth for free. In Act 39, we even mandated that small out-of-state wineries who want to ship direct into Pennsylvania had to pay a registration fee and an annual renewal fee, but we are letting the big boys, the national private wholesalers, do this for no cost to them. Why are we thinking that this is a good thing to do?
Due respect, Representative, questioning a member's motivations is against the rules of the House. I cannot answer your question. Are you finished? Would you like to continue, or? I got a couple other people want to speak. Representative Rothman.
Mr. Chairman, on the bill, I just have a novel idea that perhaps in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Liquor Control Board could spend its time in enforcement and get out of the business of selling liquor and competing with the private sector. So if you're concerned about enforcement, let's let the Liquor Control Board do their job and get out of the selling of liquor and into the enforcement.
Excellent point, Representative. Who's next? Representative Burns.
Thank you. I've been sitting on this committee for 10 plus years, and I've sat here and listened to these comments, and I haven't disagreed with one comment that was made. I agree with everyone, even the other side of the aisle. I've always stood here when privatization issues came up and been against them. I've been opposed because I believed in the system. I believed that the legislature was making good decisions on behalf of the agency and on behalf of the public and created a win-win situation. But I'm sad to report that I no longer believe that. I believe there's a conflict of interest within the LCB itself. I believe that, Act 39, which I supported, I voted against it in the House, but when it came back on concurrence, I voted for it. I believe that possibly that could have helped the situation, modernize the stores to maximize profits for the people of Pennsylvania. But as the appetite for more and more revenues, more and more demand was put on the LCB to produce revenue for the state to backfill budget deficits, it created this conflict of interest here in the legislature where we're sitting here, do I have a fiduciary responsibility to make as much money as possible at all cost for the LCB? Is that in the best interest of the people of Pennsylvania? Even if it comes at the cost of the business owners of Pennsylvania. And we're sitting here trying to determine that. Act 39 allowed for the sale of zombie licenses. So now you have the LCB, the overseer and the regulator of such licenses, directly selling them in the marketplace, zombie licenses that didn't exist previously. Now they brought them back, and they're competing and devaluing licenses across Pennsylvania. And they're the ones selling to Sheetz. They're the ones selling to Walmart. They're the ones selling to these big box retailers. When the free market should have been the answer. We created a demand with Act 39, but we also allowed the state to undercut private businesses, cutting their throats and putting them out of business. And I have a problem with that. And like I said, as a legislator sitting here, I have that internal conflict of where do we go from here? And I've tried to reason with the LCB on some of these issues with the zombie licenses. And it's my hope that we can do something about it. But until that time, I will be voting yes to this bill because I believe we need to put businesses on an equal footing. If the LCB is going to compete with private businesses, maybe the private businesses have to be on equal footing with the government agency that regulates them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Representative. Representative Isaacson, passing. Any other comments? Chairman Deasy, take it away.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And I do want to echo the comments of many of our members on both sides. This has been a great committee to be on this year. We've learned a lot of new faces around this table, bringing a lot of new ideas. So we do appreciate that. And we get together and we talk about some folks who have been in the industry. They know what works, what doesn't work. And my concern is Act 39 is only a couple years in existence. And obviously, we move kind of slow around here, unfortunately, on certain things. My concern is what has worked with Act 39 and what hasn't worked. And I kind of feel that this bill is a complete overhaul of the LCB system instead of tweaking, which we should be thinking. You know, my idea is we look to tweak what hasn't worked under Act 39. So I respectfully will be a no, and I think, as you mentioned earlier, Jeff, we had a great experience in Pittsburgh talking about the brewer's tax, and we sat and we talked about different things in our district, and that's one thing about this committee. I think there's a lot of things that we can agree on to help consumers, to help businesses, and to ultimately help the state as well. I think there's a lot of winners in the liquor business, and hopefully we can spread that throughout all the stakeholders that are out there. I just feel, unfortunately, that this particular bill is moving too fast. I think with all the new members that we do have, we should have some hearings, and we should travel throughout the Commonwealth and hear what people think about Act 39, what has worked and what hasn't worked. Because I know, as you said, Jeff, you had some health issues, and you weren't here back then, and I certainly wasn't on. I was on 5 committees last session, and that's just the way that it was. And I'm doing my best, and I'm grateful to my staff, Lynn and Brittany and Tamara here, of getting me up to speed on the liquor issues throughout Pennsylvania. So I can't vote for this. I have a lot of concerns, and I just wish that we could slow the process down a little bit and have some good discussions, hear some residents, some business owners, what has worked, what hasn't worked. And also, I appreciate Representative Mosser is here. If you want to make any comment, I don't want to step on your toes, but he is here, and he took the time to come, and we do appreciate you being here today. So I will respectfully be opposed to the bill. As I said, I think there's some amendments that could be had, and we'll talk about that. But I would love to have some hearings and talk about what has worked and what hasn't worked. And instead of rushing this through, putting together a bill that really addresses some of the concerns of all the folks out there. So thank you.
Your concerns are noted, and just for the record, I believe in that speech you just said we move painfully slow, but you want to move slower. I don't know about that, and I've stayed out of this fight, but here's my perspective. I come from what you might call a backwater. We do not have all the stores and access and convenience that many of you have. I had to go to 5 liquor stores the other day in my county to find a bottle of wine as a retirement gift for a guy who's retiring today. I see this as extending convenience. I see this as making our revenue collections much healthier in that we'll be selling to a broader base, and nobody has to carry the water all by themselves. Do I have a motion on the bill? Representative Topper moves it, second by Rep. Lewis. Ms. Godsey, please call the roll.
Kyle.
Yes.
Dowling. Yes. Gatos. Yes. Joswiak. Yes. Kale. Yes. Lewis. Yes. Mahalit. Yes. O'Neill.
Yes.
Rothman.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Simmons. Leave. Stats. Yes. Tobash. Yes. Topper. Yes. Wheeland.
Yes.
Deasy.
No.
Burns.
Yes.
Deloso.
No.
Donatucci. No. Isaacson. No. Kenyatta. No. Kulik. No. Malagari.
No.
Ravenstall. No. Schweier.
Ms. Godsey, can I have the vote count?
15, 16, 16 yeas, 9 nays.
16 yeas, 9 nays. Bill moves to the floor. Next bill we have up is House Bill Chairman Deasy's bill. Congratulations, Representative Mosser. Chairman Deasy's bill, 1341. It's your show, Chairman.
Thank you very much, and I think this will be a little less controversial. This is just to allow a I thought we should have ran this one first, but that's okay.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
No, this is just to expand the wine auction permit to help a facility that works with special needs children in Allegheny County.
Any questions on the bill from committee? Mr. Ravenstall. Mr. Ravenstall, you'd like to move the bill? Yep. Mr. Kenyatta seconds the bill. Any questions on the bill? Last chance. Any opposition to this bill? Seeing none, hearing none. Bill passes unanimously. Congratulations, Chairman Deasy. That's a wrap. Have a nice day.